With our free press, journalists should be able to say anything they want about Israel, but they don't. Is this the result of pressure from the lobby or something deeper? When Ken Silverstein was at the LA Times, he wrote a potentially controversial article about the conflict. It never got published, and he ended up leaving the paper.
Towards the end of the editing process, I had some very, very serious problems where I felt like the piece had been significantly altered in ways that I wasn't comfortable with. There was one key point that I really wanted to include that repeatedly was cut from the piece, and that was simply that one of the officials that I interviewed, who was with Hezbollah, we were talking about the question of Iran, and the Holocaust came up, and he said, there's no question that this took place. I'm not denying that the Holocaust took place. My point, though, is that Europeans committed this crime and we paid for it with our land. And I thought, this is the Arab narrative. We don't hear the Arab narrative very often at all. But I think it created a little bit of discomfort because it looked like it might be too, quote, pro-Arab, and I think that just made certain people nervous, and so they decided to fix the piece.
Let's get to the more important question first. Can a pudgy, balding, middle-aged New Yorker with a pocket camcorder make it in the world of new media?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that's the one thing that we found in doing season 1 is so many people were talking about the shift in the old business model of news, and look at the New York Times yesterday and today and what's going on with Sam Zell and the Tribune, or look at last night's episode where we kind of talked about the problems with the big business model. Citizen journalism is absolutely, positively, I think, the way of the future, and probably a more honest and pure way of looking at news.
Is there a danger in this? Is there the danger of too much noise, too many voices?
I think so, but I think that we run that danger anyway. I mean, even if you forget about, guys with pocket camcorders who have a point of view, but if you just look at what's on the networks and the proliferation of cable news, there's already too much noise. It's just a matter of who's controlling it, and those are very controlled and very calculated and directed, and so I think the addition of individuals who, again, have a point of view and have something that they want to say, it does not make it overwhelming. It actually gives you better things to find within all that white noise, I think.
Now, in the mainstream media in particular, there's sort of like a cycle. There's like the big story, and they go after the big story, and that seems to be followed by almost an equal amount of time navel-gazing about how they treated the big story. So, given that, why do we need the IFC Media Project?
Well, I mean, the reason that we wanted to do the show is, well, I guess, like, specifically based on what you just said, there is a lot of navel-gazing. And in terms of, investigative journalism, there isn't a lot of that. There is a lot of sort of, I got this story from this newspaper, this small newspaper cracked the story, and then it flies around the web, and nobody really does their own additions to it. They just kind of report and without going deeper. We see that all the time. I mean, what we want this show to be is not part of that group. We are not a news, a dissemination show. We don't fancy ourselves, like a hip 60 Minutes. What we want to be is that really cool, entertaining show that you want to watch and you want to gravitate towards, that teaches you or shows you something new each week about the way you should consume that other type of news, wherever you're getting it, whether it's from the web or a paper or TV or documentaries or whatever it is. We picture our show as more of like a companion piece, that kind of thing that says, if you're going to consume this media, which we all do, here's something you might want to know. Here's something that you should keep in mind as you're consuming it, so that maybe you'll go and you'll check a couple other different sources on the same story, and just make you smarter, wiser, a little bit more savvy, but entertaining you at the time. I'm not a doctor. I'm not in the, in the business of like just doling out medicine. We didn't do that with any of the films. I don't want to do that with the show. So that's the thing that I love about it, is creating something that's really fun and entertaining, but has a very sound base. So it's great.
Given in particular your resume, I would presume you would not be surprised if like conservative voices would start going, oh great, more liberal bias.
Yep. Well, I mean, yeah, but I think that the people who are saying that are not watching the show, because it's really sort of an equal opportunity offender. You know, we kind of go after everybody and try as best we can to be unbiased, because that's one of the things that we're pointing out, is that there's bias in the news. So it doesn't really behoove us to kind of, you know, partake in that. Like, a really good example is in last night's episode, we had a cartoon called Who's Your Daddy, where we basically kind of lifted the veil on who funds our show. And again, like, we thought it was a very fun, hip, entertaining way to say, like, we are realists. We are not, you know, these sort of like lefty whatevers. And, you know, if we're going to point at, you know, the ownership of papers and how that might affect the news, we thought we should explain to people who funds our show. So, I mean, you know, it's a little bit edgier than that. But yeah, I mean, you know, when it came out, we heard a lot of comparisons to Michael and to his show, and which I never worked on. I worked on the movies. My partner, Nick, worked on his show, but he also worked on The Daily Show and The Franken Show and Insomniac. So, you know, I think that we both don't feel that tied to Michael and to his work. But if critics do, and if they want to latch onto that, or if that's their hook to get into thinking about the show, then I can't stop that. You know, all I can do is produce a great show that proves them otherwise.
Have you heard from Michael Moore, by the way?
I heard from him. I think the day before our show launched, and he wrote me a very, very funny instant message that just said, "I'm so happy to be riding on your coattails. Thanks for all the free press."
You know what I noticed this week on TV? Yeah. Okay. They always want to match the background of the story to the background of the reporter. Like, check this out.
As you can see by this chart, the more black stories there are in the news, the more black commentators we see on the news. And then this hero chicken fired the gun once, shooting off the robber's private area.
Okay. Ah, my penis.
I'd say that's one cock-a-mamie story. Juan Ramirez reporting on the drug smuggling problem here at the Mexican border. Sir, are you smuggling marijuana into the United States?
See?
Really? How much for an ounce?